Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ask JP podcast, where we tackle the issues of the day. This is yet another episode in our ongoing criminal justice reform series. I'm very pleased and excited to have in front of me Rhonda Goode Douglas, who's a candidate for criminal district court. Rhonda is a New Orleans native who's a graduate of Ursuline Academy, Tulane University, and Tulane Law School. In 2003, she was a prosecutor in the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office. She served the citizens of Orleans Parish for 12 and a half years. In 2013, Rhonda was proudly awarded the Outstanding Prosecutor Award by Citizens and Victims Against Crime for her tireless work on behalf of the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office. She also served the Jefferson Parish District Attorney's Office for 2 years. After leaving the Jefferson Parish District Attorney's Office, Rhonda litigated environmental law matters at Blue Williams LLP. Rhonda also served as in-house counsel at Allstate Insurance Company. Rhonda is a member of the Martinet Bar Association, the Jefferson Parish Bar Association, the New Orleans Bar Association, and the Louisiana State Bar Association. Rhonda is also a founding member of the Omicron Lambda Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the New Orleans chapter of Jack and Jill America Incorporated, and the New Orleans, Louisiana chapter of Links Incorporated. Is there anything else you want to add before we get into the questions, Rhonda?
So the only other thing that I'd like to add is that I am the proud mother of two sons, Reese, who is 12 and a half, and my bonus son, Colin, who will be 30 on November 6th.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's get right into it. First question: why do you want to be a criminal court judge?
So I decided to run for judge this year because, number one, I am obviously a citizen of Orleans Parish. And for me, I have obvious concerns about public safety as well as ensuring that the criminal justice system is fair and just. As I stated, I am raising a 12 and a half year old Black male in this society and in this community. And I am concerned about what I've seen in the criminal justice system and want to do my part to make sure or try to at least help in making the criminal justice system fairer for everyone in the community.
Okay. Um, what is your judicial philosophy? And by that, I mean, as a judge, you will be presiding over prosecutors, defense attorneys, defendants. The public will be interacting with you as witnesses and victims. What can they expect when they come into your court? What will your court be like?
So, I mean, first and foremost, they can expect me to maintain a positive judicial temperament. They can expect to be treated with fairness and dignity. Everyone that comes into my courtroom will be treated fairly. Defendants can expect that their rights will be preserved. I will honor all of the rights that a defendant is entitled to in the Constitution. Victims can be assured that they will be protected under the Victims' Rights Act. I will treat every case differently. You certainly cannot have a blanket approach to how you treat certain types of offenses. Every person in every situation that comes into criminal district court certainly has a story behind it. Every individual has a reason and a history as to why they are there. I plan on using rehabilitative programming for nonviolent offenses, if that is possible, and if a defendant qualifies for some sort of rehabilitative programming, I am certainly inclined to do that. I am concerned about the recidivism rate that we see here in Louisiana, and I feel like, unfortunately, when individuals are sentenced to prison, they are coming back and um, they haven't been, I guess the word is changed, or they haven't had an opportunity to, you know, do things to improve themselves while they're there, so that when they come back, they're coming back to the same old environment, same old situation, and there has been nothing that they have gained from that experience. So my hope is that, if someone is sentenced to prison, that they are at least given some opportunity for training to better themselves, so that when they come back out, they are able to become a vibrant part of society and provide for their families and whatever else they need to do and become part of our community as well.
Okay. What are your general thoughts on the way things are going on currently at Tulane and Broad? Obviously, you've been a practitioner, you've been a prosecutor over there. I'm sure you've had some interaction since then, but like, how do you envision things are currently going at Tulane and Broad, and what, as a judge, do you bring to the table to perhaps change them?
So, unfortunately, obviously, the pandemic has halted, court proceedings somewhat. I know that, the judges are still able to um, do some things via Zoom, and I think they've opened up a couple of times and, um, had to shut back down due to COVID concerns. So there are a couple of things that I would like to see. I mean, obviously, we're going to have to change the way things progress at Tulane and Broad, period, just because of COVID and the pandemic. I mean, we're not going to be able to just blanketly, handle cases the way that they've been handled in the past. When I worked at Tulane and Broad, on any given day, you'd have a courtroom full of people with anywhere from 30 to 70 things on the docket, which means you might have, 90 to 150 people in court at one time. That's not going to be able to happen. So I sense that, the judges are going to have to create schedules so that, oh, shoot. Sorry, JP.
Okay, good.
I
You're still
gotta,
there.
sorry about that.
Okay.
I'm envisioning that, judges are going to have to, create an environment where lawyers are able to come in. I think that, you know, in terms of how we've handled the day-to-day process at Tulane and Broad has been very difficult for everyone. As a witness, you're expected to come and sit all day. As a defendant, you're expected to come and sit all day. As an attorney, you're expected to come and sit all day. And so that is very restrictive. If you're a defendant who has, you're on probation now and you've gotten a job, but if you have to come in and check in, with the court, and to be expected to be there all day, you now you're missing out on work. You may get in trouble because you missed your job. So there are things that we just need to consider when we're planning our days out and when we're scheduling things. Um, so that, I mean, that's one of my main concerns. Just making uh, criminal justice more accessible, I guess. I mean, if that's the right
No,
phrasing.
I think that's the way to phrase it. Because the thing is that like the only time people interact with the system is usually when they're at their worst. Either
Right.
they are a defendant who's being charged with a crime, or they're a victim who was the victim of a crime. And if their interaction with the system is after everything else that's going forward, victims of defense are coming to court. They're being bumped or rescheduled because of COVID restrictions or anything else. There has to be a sense of predictability so that when a victim comes to court, defendant comes to court, whoever's coming to court, was the private attorney or a public defender or DA, everyone has that expectation of we're going to go on this date, we're going to do these things, and then you're going to leave. And even with that date, you have to have some more fixed idea of what's the time commitment. Because you're right, if you're someone on probation, you're doing the right thing, you got a job, and you got to tell your boss, hey, you remember you hired me because you thought I was going to be a good worker, and now I got to go to court because I got a criminal charge that I'm working through right now, buddy. Can you give me a day off? It's not going to end well. So
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that that's been prohibitive in general for, victims as well. Of if,
right.
if a DA has 10 things set for trial on the docket and they're calling all of these witnesses and saying, okay, I need you to be in court on Monday, and everybody shows up, they can only go to trial on one thing. And
Right.
so unfortunately, now this victim or the defendant has, lost a day of work, lost a day of time. They've sat there all day, and it just has really been prohibitive, and why people, I think, are not that anyone wants to be in criminal district court, but they're less inclined to want to participate because of the way things have progressed. And I think it's just really, docketing issues that we need to address in court,
No, I
definitely.
think you're totally right. So, um, next up, I'm going to go over a couple of issues that are important to the criminal justice reform and criminal justice in general, and you can kind of give me your opinions on them. what's your opinion on the cash bail system? Do you think it works? Is it not working? And what would you do as a judge to change it? And let
So,
me preface it by saying that I know there's some legislative constraints as far as what you can do with cash bail, but just kind of what do you think is in the realm of your ability as a judge to try and affect that system?
so I will say this. I have concerns about, individuals um, being arrested and not posting any sort of bail or something to ensure the return of to court. So I don't necessarily think that um, we can totally do away with, the bail system. I do think we need to reform it and fix it. There's absolutely no reason why we should have individuals sitting in jail for 60 days or 120 days or whatever it is now, waiting for a charge to be accepted. I know that the district attorney's office has, X amount of days. I think it's 60 days now on felonies to charge a case. And there's no reason why, especially simply because you cannot make a bail or a bond. So I think that judges need to ensure that they are setting reasonable bonds that people can make and that will reassure the individual that they will come back to court. So that's my concern. I do think that we need to reform it, but I can't say that we should totally do away with the cash bail system totally, because I do think we do need to have something to require people to come back and inspire people to come back to court. Now, what that looks like, I haven't really figured that piece out yet, but I do think that that there is some reform needed.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's a really good point. So, mandatory minimums. Obviously, as a prosecutor, you dealt with them. You're very familiar with the process of mandatory minimums, triple bills, multi bills, that whole deal. As a judge, well, as a former prosecutor who's going to be looking to be a judge, how do you feel about mandatory minimums and the way they affect the judiciary?
So, it definitely ties the hands of the court because there are certain crimes that you are required, by law um, to sentence. I think that's a legislative issue. I will say that on those multiple bill cases, the judges can deviate below the mandatory minimum under State v. Dorothy, and that may be something that and obviously we have four candidates that are running for DA right now. I don't think that any of those candidates will use um, the multiple bill the way that it has been used in this previous administration. So with that being said, hopefully the judge's hands won't be tied by the multiple bill um, system, I
Yeah.
guess is what we
I
want to
think
say.
I've interviewed most of those DA candidates. To your point, they've all said we're not going to multi-bill every single person that comes in the building, and I think that under the current DA, that's pretty much been the case. He pretty much multi-bills everyone. So you're right. I mean, I think it'll have to be a partnership between the judges and DAs to figure out how they go going forward with it. But I think people at times they get mad at judges. They underestimate the discretion of DAs. The district attorney office sets the policy of whether you're going to multi-bill, and they can choose to multi-bill or choose not to. And the current DA just chooses to multi-bill every single time. So, um,
Absolutely.
a death penalty. I'm going to bifurcate this one a little bit. What is your personal position on the death penalty? Because obviously your personal position versus the judicial position, they're separate because the law is the law as far as death penalty is concerned. But I think the public would like to know what's your personal position on the death penalty and then kind of what will you do with it as a judge?
So personally, I think that the death penalty has been used unfairly. So personally, I am opposed to it being implied. I will say, thankfully, we haven't seen a death penalty case, at least in Orleans Parish, in several years. Um, but understanding that, if there is a death penalty case that is charged, um, it is the jury's decision unanimously to decide whether or not someone should be put to death. Um, and so as a judge, I will follow the law as required if that is the case. I hope that we don't see that come back into New Orleans um, anytime soon. Prayerfully, we will never see another death penalty case in Orleans Parish. However, as a judge, you are required to follow the law as written. And so until the death penalty statute is abolished here in Louisiana, I think as the judge, I will have to follow um, whatever is put before me. But just to remember that that is a jury's decision. It must be unanimous. And it also is up to the district attorney's office as to whether or not they will seek that penalty in the case. And hopefully it would be reserved for the most severe and the most horrendous case that none of us can even think is possible.
Okay. The next one, this is a little more complicated. So, judicial activism. There are kind of two schools of thought of what a activist judge is. You have the first school of thought, which is activist judges are inherently bad. Every judge should rule based purely upon case law and precedent, never deviate from it, never change. Your hands are tied. Your job is to sit there and call balls and strikes.
Mm-hmm.
There's the other school of thought, which is you're a judge, you're elected, you have your life experience, you know the community. If you see something's wrong, see something, say something, and it's your job as a judge that you can go beyond ball and strike. Something is just a bad law, it's a bad precedent. You're going to do whatever the heck you think you need to do. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
So I fall into the judicial activist in terms of number one, I'm a native New Orleanian, so I'm very familiar with the community. I'm a Black mother and a Black woman, so I will take into account my life experiences as well when I'm sitting on the bench. I think that it is very important because number one, um, we don't do everything perfect here in Louisiana. And so I think that it is important for judges to study other states, study other systems, and study other laws to see how we can perfect or at least make better the criminal justice system. So will I sit there and if I see something that I don't think is right, or if I think that there's a law that we need to tweak or work on, and not say anything about it? Absolutely not. If I find out that there are rehabilitative programming grants out there that we can, write to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for the citizens that come into Tulane and Broad, absolutely. I think that I will be, involved in trying to make sure that we fix what we have right now here in Louisiana, because, you know, obviously there are some issues here, and we need to work on our criminal justice system.
Okay, great. Do you consider yourself a reform candidate? Let me kind of define that, because I haven't met one judge candidate who said I'm not a reform candidate. I think a better way to kind of define that is, what do you think reform is? And by your definition, do you think you support reform?
So I think that reform is um, tweaking the system that we have now and trying to make it better. So in in my opinion, I am a reform candidate in that respect. Um, I'm not gonna sit here and say that in every single case I'm gonna you know uh, try to I'm gonna not sentence people to prison if that's not if that's not the case. I can't promise that. I promise that um, I can be fair, and I promise that if there's a situation where someone needs to be rehabilitated, or they need a second chance, or maybe a third chance, sometimes a fourth chance, I will be that judge that will do that. I'm not going to, toss the book at people, lock them up, and throw away the key. And I know that, based upon my prior work history, people have made that assumption because I'm a prosecutor or a former prosecutor. People make the assumption that, that's all that prosecutors want to do. But what's different, there's a different world for Black prosecutors in these offices, and people need to understand that. As a prosecutor, my role was to seek justice, and I took that role very seriously when I worked in both of the district attorney's offices that I worked in, because I didn't feel that it was my job to come in there and just convict everybody. And so, yes, I do consider myself to be a reform candidate, in that I think that I will come to the bench and that I will work with the people that come in my courtroom and try to do the best that I can to ensure that people's lives are better as a result of having to be in Section E, either be it a victim or a defendant. Now, does that make me the traditional reform candidate? I don't know, but
well, and I mean, to your point, people often forget that kind of the tenor of criminal justice in the city is really set by a district attorney. Because I know from being a practitioner, my experience in Jefferson Parish with the DA's office very different than Orleans Parish. And
absolutely.
I say that in that it's amazing how different it is when a case is properly screened. When you go and sit with your ADA in Jefferson Parish and they're like, let's talk about your client. This is his first brush. Here are the options available to him. And basically it's like, how can we figure out a way to help your client not come back to us?
Exactly.
When you go to Orleans Parish right now, this has like really gotten worse since you've left. It is, I am going to convict your client. You could choose how long he goes away for. That's pretty much how it goes. That's the discussion you have there. You walk in there and it's like, it's not a question of, is it justice? Whatever his mitigating circumstances. Was the case even screened? It's, we're going to trial. It could be marijuana. It could be heroin. It could be jaywalking. You're going to trial. And here's your offer. If you don't like it, I'm going to go to trial and I'm going to convict you. It's just, and so I think to your point, there's an assumption that every district attorney and every ADA is there to like hang another skin on their wall. And I think that part of that's been indoctrinated into us, because if you look at BLM across the country, it varies tremendously. I'm not saying criminal justice is broken across the country, but the severity of how bad it is varies by jurisdiction. And a lot of us in New Orleans are conditioned by the fact that we really have had a bad run of district attorneys, like the head district attorneys, like Harry Connick and Leon are really, felt like their job was to stack as many bodies in jail as possible. I'm digressing. Let's get the next question. How's campaign during COVID? I've campaigned traditionally. I see how you guys campaign. It's different.
It's very difficult. So, I'm a people person and I like to, shake hands, touch, hug, all that kind of stuff. And so you have to be very careful, because you don't really know what people's comfort level is in terms of you even approaching. We can't do the traditional canvassing where you knock on doors and talk to the people in the community. I've been trying to do lit drop. Every now and again, I will run into someone who's, outside or whatever. And some people are very comfortable with you talking to them. Some people are not. People don't want you to touch their cars. They don't want you to touch their doors. And I understand that, because everybody's concerned about COVID and where you're going to get it from and all these things. So it has been very difficult. I think, this is my first time doing it. So I don't know what, there aren't a lot of activities like I know in the past, that people have fundraisers and this and that. And so there's none of that going on. So there's a lot of campaigning via social media. You really don't get everything is done via Zoom as far as forums. So I'm not getting that reaction from people that, you normally, a lot of times you're on a Zoom and no one has their face showing. So you don't know if people are following you or not. Like I'm so enjoying this conversation.
That is such a great point. I didn't even think about that as a candidate. You go on a virtual forum, it's just names.
It's just names. Right. Names. You're like, okay.
So you could be like, I am killing it. I'm making this point. It's amazing. And people could be on the name could be up. They could be cursing you out. They could be asleep. They can have their kids there sitting there while they're making a sandwich. You don't even know. That is a really, really good point. No one has brought that up yet. The whole name, just the name, or the frozen picture, like the glamour shot picture while they're gone. That's a really good point. All right.
So I'm totally enjoying this because at least I can see you and
Yeah, you see my
I see your
reactions. It's
reaction.
a yeah. Um, so why are you more keep it clean, but why are you more qualified than your opponent?
So I am going to say there are several reasons why I'm more qualified than in my opponent, and I think you will appreciate this as an attorney. Um, I have tried um, over 100 jury trials and hundreds of bench trials. So I've spent the working hours in court. I've spent the hours, prepping witnesses for trial and prepping a docket and running a docket because part of my assignment at the district attorney's office in New Orleans was the major offense team, which was the murders and rapes um, that occurred in the city of New Orleans. And so I have hours upon hours of courtroom time and time with people and victims, whereas my opponent does not. That is the main um, thing that I think separates me from my opponent. My opponent in the past has indicated that he would not ever want to seek the bench because he felt like coming to the bench was a place where you lost your fight. Whereas I feel like I can go to the bench and advocate and still fight for justice, and still fight for the people in this community via rehabilitative programming or via making sure that a victim has had their day in court. So that is what separates me. I've also tried cases throughout the state. I did a civil practice for a while where I worked at Blue Williams, and I also worked for Allstate doing, civil insurance defense. So I have tried civil, not jury trials, but civil bench trials throughout the state of Louisiana. And I also worked for the Louisiana Supreme Court writing. So I have, I'm very well-rounded. I have a very well-rounded background. And, as an attorney, in my opinion, you may agree with me, there is nothing worse than trying to try a case before a judge that has never tried a case before. So,
I will 1,000% agree with that. It is very frustrating, especially when I will tell you, especially in civil court, when you're dealing with a judge who doesn't even understand the basic rules of court, like you cannot interview the witness, the prosecution and defense have to interview the witness. I've had
exactly.
so many judges who are like, y'all taking too long. I'm going to do my own thing. And you're sitting there and you're like, I'm trying to build a record for an appeal and I can't get a word in. So, I mean,
Right.
you're right. Like having a judge with some practice experience is pretty important. I would agree with that.
So that's the main reasons why I think that I'm more qualified than my opponent.
Okay. I think that's fair. And is there anything else you want to add?
Just that, I have been active in the community. I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'm a life member. I was the founder of the first Black sorority on Tulane's campus. Believe it or not, when I attended Tulane and back in the 90s, there had never been a Black sorority on that campus. So me, along with 19 other women, were able to create and start the first Black sorority on Tulane's campus, and I've been active with that sorority ever since. So throughout my work with Alpha Kappa Alpha, Jack and Jill of America, and the Links Incorporated, I have served the community as a mentor to young boys and girls. I have raised money for scholarships for college students to attend HBCUs locally, as well as started and raised money for all sorts of health awareness issues for women. And then I also am an adjunct professor at Tulane University where I teach trial advocacy in the evenings. So those are just some things that I've done to, make sure that I have worked in this community to create, the better society for everyone. Um, I'm a mother, and raising a Black son in New Orleans is very difficult here. Of course, as a mother, we pray for our kids on a daily basis. So that's something else that I think is important for people to consider when they are looking at considering candidates.
Okay. Would you like to add any of your Facebook, Twitter, any social media so people can find you?
Absolutely. So I have my little push card here. So on Twitter, it's at Rhonda for Judge. Facebook, it's Rhonda Good Douglas for Judge, and the good, it does have an E. A lot of people think that the E is silent. The E is silent, so a lot of people drop off the E.
Right.
And then to email me, it's campaign@rhondagooddouglas.com. So if anybody has any questions or would like to know a little bit more about me, please visit my website. I hope to have your support during early vote or on November 3rd.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Rhonda. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, JP, and thanks for doing this. I think this is going to be very beneficial.
I hope so. I hope voters are paying attention. I hope they listen to what you have to say. I think you had a lot of great things.
Thank you.